Clear to engage. Time on target. 5 mics. Out.
I don't know if you noticed. You probably didn't, but I have a format for how I post things. And you just post whatever you type. This is the one thing is...
Are we recording?
Yes, we're recording.
Oh, okay.
We've been recording this whole time.
Nice.
But you can cut out whatever you want.
That's all right.
The podcast title, which, by the way, very good episode with Dave, but it's very long. And so you can see it in this mode, but then when I pop it open... Well, you only get, are we in a housing crisis? So I try to keep them shorter. That's why I try to keep the title shorter. But Dave Honeycutt did break it down to the studs. It's a very good episode.
Yeah, thanks. I love, breaking it down to the studs with a little housing reference, right? It's kind of fun.
Yeah.
No, he's got a wealth of information. I always think I know housing until you talk to Dave Honeycutt. And then you learn you really have just scratched the surface. Especially when it comes to like planning and how we got here, all the goals that are around Senate Bill 100 when we originally did it, all the things, right? So you're like, holy moly, there's a lot there. And I think the key thing that he said is like when they did the goals around Senate Bill 100, number 1 wasn't supposed to be more important than number 12.
Right. And it's not an order. It's just a list.
Yeah. So... And it's like, this idea that what's happened is that some people have made certain goals within Senate Bill 100 more important or tried to elevate their importance. So the economic development stuff and the housing types and all that sort of stuff really got downplayed. And really all of that has contributed to the housing crisis that we're in.
And I wonder if you go back in time, if the people who passed the original Senate Bill 100 and the folks who kind of did all the updating of it in the 80s, if they saw what was happening today, if they would keep it, or if they would go, $700,000 a house might not be exactly what we were looking for.
Yeah. I don't think it is. I think that definitely controlling sprawl was the reality of what they were trying to go after. I mean, if you can...
Yeah.
Go back and see some of those discussions that they had. If we could, I think they would be all kind of tied around that idea that you didn't want these vast wastelands of homes. That was really a response to what they were seeing happening kind of in the outskirts of Chicago. If you put yourself in the time frame of the early 70s, we came off of this World War II just explosion of building and development, like highway systems being developed, right? I mean, all the things that happened post World War II was pretty intense. And we were in a huge growth period across the United States. And there was kind of there was always has been and always will be an anti-California sentiment in Oregon. But it was kind of a response to all that we didn't want to be this big, huge California. And I think it was really an over response that has since been bastardized over the years.
And I think you could do some things to really take that concept and make it still apply so you don't have the sprawl. But if you would just set it up so that, one, your buildable land inventory was actually correct and we weren't, counting quote-unquote buildable land as stuff that would cost millions of dollars just to build an individual little house on, and that stuff didn't count. And then once you get to a point where you drop below your 20-year land supply, there's an automatic process to expand your UGB out.
Yeah.
And you can just say, okay, this doesn't make sense to add, and you just take a few things out of it that doesn't make sense to add. And you had a more automatic process where it's like, okay, we're not going to have sprawl, but we are going to allow growth. And I think if you change the system to be like that, I don't think that you would hear as much negativity about it as you do, because you're balancing your goals. You're balancing your conservation with your economic development. We're so far behind on housing. Our population barely grew or declined over the last couple of years, and we still don't have enough housing. Yeah. And what you're talking about is when they had that baby boom, right? when everybody came back, and they had the baby boom, and so they needed a lot of housing because all the families and folks, it was just growing, population was growing. In Oregon, at least, population isn't growing rapidly. Other states that do have rapid population growth are able to keep a handle on their housing costs.
Or at least not fall super far behind. Yeah.
Not fall nearly as badly behind. But yes, very good very good podcast. Dave Honeycutt is a wealth of knowledge. I would have no doubt that he would be able to tell 10, 20-year employees of DLCD what they're doing wrong with their jobs and how to do it more correctly. And I don't think he's worked a day in his life for that agency. So,
but it's so crazy. He's so right. If we doubled, and I want people to, if you haven't gone on there, look at the UGB map in Oregon. And like Dave said, if you doubled the size of the UGB in Oregon today, you wouldn't even notice it.
Yep. You would not.
I don't know. It's crazy. Hey, speaking of hating California, what do you think of what's happening down there with ICE coming in and the LA riots or whatever they protest, whatever the heck they want to call them? Is it just a precursor to the No Kings this Saturday, or what's the deal?
I reached out to our local law enforcement in Lynn County just to make sure they were aware of the protests, because I know that we're a pro law and anti rioting county, and they were well aware. They're prepared, so that was good. So first,
Sheriff Duncan is prepped and ready to go in Lynn County.
Correct.
All right, good.
Which is good.
My favorite sheriff, by the way, in the state.
So. A fantastic sheriff out there. I don't know as many of the other sheriffs, but one of the things that is great about her is she's not embroiled in massive corruption scandals like in Deschutes County. Awkward.
Didn't work on that campaign, Reagan. Just saying. I did Michelle Duncan's race, but I didn't do the one in Deschutes County.
I did squint because I was there in October of election year to give like an election presentation to Deschutes County Republicans.
Yeah.
And I saw their handouts for candidates, and I was like, why did they endorse Vanderkamp? And that has turned out that kind of spoiled like milk, that aged like milk.
And I think both candidates were Republicans too.
I don't know if they were registered R's, but they were pro law enforcement candidates generally.
But both pretty right of center, which I thought was and most are. I mean, most of our, except for the Multnomah County ones, but I think they even are. They just play the game and they just call themselves Democrats. But I mean, there's no way you can be a county sheriff and not be pro law enforcement. Like, how is that even possible?
Right.
So
exactly. And I think what I think about the ICE protest mostly is just that it's a new way for Democrats to be anti-policing without saying defund the police or being anti-police. And one thing that was hilarious too, and I was just reading the article about how Portland cut their police budget by $2 million to put it into parks. And then the Portland Chamber said they wouldn't back, and they would actually oppose the parks levy unless that funding got restored. And so they found a way to restore the funding in a different mechanism.
Nice.
So that they could keep the Metro Chamber on board with theirs. And I think that's a great move. I mean, that's what business needs to be doing, especially in Portland, standing up for law enforcement. I heard on OPB this morning that, can you tell it's been a slow day? I heard on OPB this morning that there were several folks arrested outside of the Portland ICE facility. So good. So that just needs to continue. There needs to continue to be a hard smackdown to ensure. DeSantis out there saying, and his sheriff saying, if you throw a brick at law enforcement, we'll just drop you.
Yeah.
I mean, straight up. And I think
great.
DeSantis even said you can hit protesters with cars if they block traffic. Like, absolutely, yes. These people need to understand that we're not going to pander to them, that they're not allowed to ruin people's lives just to make a statement. You're allowed to protest, but you're not allowed to stop traffic, and you're not allowed to attack cops.
Yeah.
And ICE enforcement, they're federal law enforcement officials, so they count in that. And we just need to make sure that that's the message that gets sent. And unfortunately in Oregon, they kind of pander and hem and haw around a little bit on it. So it leaves more space for them.
It's really a weird, and I'm always scared this time of year, especially with this and the No Kings protest and the ICE stuff. And we're coming up on Juneteenth. We're coming up on Rodney King. We're coming up on, in 2020, that summer was not fun. Like, it was not fun because what's going to happen is the backlashes. And I think the hard far left, the Soros groups and stuff, they want that. They want the chaos. That's their whole goal, is to create the chaos. And they have a perfect villain in Donald Trump in their mind, of the one that's creating the chaos, when they're in reality, they're the ones creating the chaos. And I think it's going to be an interesting summer, because I think the desire of the hard left is to create as much chaos and anger towards Donald Trump that, that can carry them into the midterms, all of the things, and everything that Donald Trump does, they're going to say, horrible, 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 right? When, what's his face? The stupid senator that decided he was going to bum rush Kristi Noem dude, he got taken down, which I thought was great.
I laughed really hard because Secret Service, they had like a statement saying they didn't realize he was a U.S. senator. Yeah. They just thought he was a security threat, which is hilarious. That's like when you don't recognize the brand new representative in the hallway, and you're like, "Oh, what agency do you work for?" Whoops.
Yeah, when I get on the elevator and you go like, "Oh, hi, Brian," and they're like, "Yeah, I'm Representative Watanabe." I'm like, "Oh, sorry, didn't know who you were. Nice to meet you." Kind of funny, but that happened to me because she didn't have if they don't have a name badge on or anything, you don't recognize them, and they're new.
Yeah.
Or like the new one that took over for Neron, the new liberal that took over for Neron.
Reiki Smith.
Yeah. Superintendent. That's all we need. Former superintendent. That's
some of those superintendents are not so super.
No, they haven't been. Not the ones that prescribe to the agenda setting, political setting superintendents. I'd rather them actually just educate our kids. But.
Well, excuse me. A residual cough from my sickness earlier.
I know, yeah.
I was feeling terrible on Tuesday, and then I just took an extra day Wednesday to kind of get away from it, so I wasn't bringing the sickness to the office. Plus, we had Kim and 2 interns in, so we were covered here. But
you always got me backing you up, so you're fine.
Appreciate that, Brian.
We're a little slow over in the Senate right now.
Superintendents is a great way for us to transition into talking about Senate Bill 916, which is basically paying unemployment for striking workers, right? So they can go on strike, and instead of having to use their strike fund, they can all get paid unemployment, or they can use their strike fund on top of the unemployment, I think, and so they can they can strike for longer, basically. And so the bill goes through. It slowed a little bit because you started to see big city governments that are blue and big, superintendents and school districts from blue areas say, "Whoa, guys, this is going to be expensive. Are you sure you want to do this?"
They have to pay the unemployment benefits,
right? They have to pay them, and they are also the ones that, especially the school districts specifically, you don't see as many strikes outside of the schools and the higher education space. I don't see a lot of county strikes occasionally, but it's very rare. That's just going to increase how often they happen, and it's just going to be money out of other core services, and especially right now, and we're going to talk about in a little bit, funding for local government and some potential options to help get them some more dollars so that they can, do roads and public safety and stuff like that. But they were bringing this up, and so it kind of slowed 916 down. Mm-hmm. And then a couple of Democrats in the Senate, put their foot on the brakes for a minute, and were able to get, the more I think about it, a pretty substantive change. The bill, when it went over to the Senate, would have covered 26 weeks of unemployment.
Insane.
Half of a year, 6-month strikes. They cut it down to 10.
Well, we had 4 senators who voted no.
4 senators who voted no. And
Mira Mislin, Meek, Golden, and
Meek?
I said Meek. So,
sorry.
And then Salman. Sorry. Uh-huh. Sorry, Senator Salman. So they vote no.
Who voted no on the first time, by the way?
Yes, well, Neron wasn't there, so she never actually got the vote the first time, up or down, on either side of the floor.
Oh, crazy.
Because it all happened while she was transferring. It was kind of funny.
That's
funny. So anyways, it goes, so they voted no, goes down, so goes conference committee.
Yep.
And then they basically pick people from the House and the Senate to go on conference committee. That part was kind of wild, too, because they changed on OLIS, I think, 4 different times that the conference committee was going to meet.
Mm-hmm.
And so they finally meet. only 2 Republicans on the conference committee.
Because it's 3 from each chamber. It's basically the people from the main committee that negotiated the bill, business and labor, and I don't know what it's called even in the House anymore. We have 3 business and labor committees.
So it becomes 4-2, basically, 4-2. Is what happens, which sucks, right, for the minority party, i.e. us.
Sucks even more if you're alone, if one of your 2 doesn't show up, right?
Yeah, it makes it a lot harder. So, so Senator Bauman was there. Somehow, Representative Lucetta Elmer couldn't be there for whatever reason. I don't know. It happened the same day she was in the Capitol, but she doesn't show up. So they make the change, which is a crazy, to your point, to go from 26 weeks to 10 weeks was a very substantive change. I mean, that 16 weeks of that did make a difference. Cause like, again, if it's going to pass and you're just going to keep, they would have kept going back and forth on conference committee till they basically passed it. Right.
Yeah.
So what happens if let's say one Democrat holds out and they vote with the Republicans and they're deadlocked and they don't come to, because it has to have 4 to pass, right? Because there's 6. So they got to have 4. You can't have 3 because 3 doesn't pass. 3 is a fail. But of course, since Representative Elmer wasn't there, that wasn't going to happen. But what if somebody did and she was there and there was 3-3? Does it just die in conference committee? I think it does, doesn't it?
It would, except I don't know if
they could hold it again.
Well, I don't know if conference committee allows the presiding officers to be ex officio members and come down and vote through, right? Like they do in Ways and Means.
Wouldn't that be just awesome?
The Senate president does. But they don't like to do that, but they do if they have to, right? So I am not an expert on that part of the rules. I should be, but I'm not.
Either way,
they were going to move it. They were going to find a way.
Yeah.
They would have if this one died, they would have dropped the new bill until they got it where they needed to pass it.
Yeah. And I'm assuming, and watching, I was on the Senate floor when the first time it was getting concurred failed. Neron was last to vote. So she saw it already failed, so she voted no. So I'm not really going to say that was good for her for standing up or give her shit for flipping, because I think she would have voted yes if she had to vote yes to pass it. So she clearly moves to a yes and then goes back, and Mark Meek becomes the turncoat on Senate Bill 916, and he votes yes and sends it back to the House, and then the House passes it with 35 votes. So pretty much party line vote.
Yes.
I think party line, for the most part, party line vote. It was very interesting to see that Senator Golden stayed on as a no.
Yeah.
And then of course, Senator Salem, she always threw down on that bill from the get-go that she was a no.
Yeah. And I'm confusing this with 3054, which we're going to talk about in a minute. I almost thought there was a Republican that voted for it, but there were no Republicans that voted for this one.
Yeah, so it goes back, and it truly is bad policy. It's this is first in the nation stuff, which is crazy. It hurts our own taxpayers. It hurts our own school districts that we say we want to help. It hurts our own local governments that we say we want to help, because there's nothing that basically says that they can't just do it over and over again.
Nope.
And 10 weeks still, even 10 weeks can you imagine missing school for 10 weeks because your teachers are on strike?
Right. No, and I think you saw the Portland strike was pretty ugly. The Albany strike was pretty ugly. So, this is not going to have positive results for anybody except
you don't think?
The unions, who can now shift money out of their strike funds into politics.
Yeah.
So, it's great for them. I'm sure they're going to enjoy, even as we're, making difficult decisions here in the legislature in our budget, we made one of their budget decisions a lot easier. So, and I think at the end of the day, that's all it's about.
And they get to walk into that negotiating room. And I know a lot of Democrats, this is rare. They rarely strike. This won't be used. Well, now the school districts have less of an ability to push back. Yeah. To say no, because then they'll say, well, we'll just strike. And then the teacher's like, I'm going to get paid anyway. Screw it. I'll strike. Right. And then now the school districts are going to have to bend over even more for teachers unions, which is just horrible. And that goes to show you, like, this session is since it was not defined by the Democrats, by the leadership in the Democratic Party, they did not define this session as this is what we're going to do. it got defined by the unions. That's what I've come to. For the unions have defined this session as a union session. 2025 will be forever known as the union session.
Yep.
Where they got everything they wanted, and if they didn't, they were pissed, and they said we want more. And now they're going to rule. They're going to require that, on the campaign side, they better pony up, which also doesn't help us because now Democrats are going to have more money. To fight back and try to get even a bigger majority. And if we don't get our crap together as Republicans, we're gonna get beat up hard with all of this stuff, the anti-Trump stuff. I mean, Democrats stand up on the floor every day and spout anti-Trump stuff. We're not pushing back. I think we should stand up, and I think we should go after sanctuary status. Why haven't we pulled the bill for sanctuary status? Why aren't we trying to do a referral to the voters to remove sanctuary status in Oregon? I think that would be. I bet it passes statewide.
The polling has changed pretty significantly. I sent this to some Democrats, and I should pull this up, but the polling in California on healthcare for illegals, which has been polled previously and had a majority support, now has majority opposition. So I'll put that in our notes because I think that's interesting.
Minnesota just, in their budget, they came back to special session to fix their budget, just removed illegal alien health care for adults.
Yep.
Because they need the money. They realize it. And that was just an expense that they couldn't even afford. That's Tim Walz's estate. He signed it. So that tells you where the sentiment is going on this issue. It is truly a social issue of our time. And if the Democrats, I say, let them keep doubling down on this stuff. That great, open our borders. It's Mexico, America's Mexico nowadays, and who cares, right? Just open the borders. I think we should be doubling down on it hard because I think Trump knew it. It's why he won. I truly believe the border issue is why he won. And we should be doubling down on it hard.
Next up, and something that the legislature is doubling down on at the end of session, is what Republicans and most people will call tax hikes, and Democrats will refer to as revenue enhancements. So you'll see this, and there's kind of a lot of conversations out there, but the conversation is narrowing. We talked before about, I would say ham-fisted attempts to sort of pitch a kicker steal. It really wasn't going anywhere. And I want to give props to Republicans for standing up on that because it's obviously very tempting to want to tap the kicker. But people did realize that's really going to hurt them with voters of all parties, but especially Republicans. So good for them for standing up on that front. So they're looking at different revenue options. And Brian, what are we hearing in terms of what potential revenue is sort of out there? What can we say without breaking too much of the confidence or any potential insider knowledge that we definitely do not have here on the podcast?
I think the three things that are right now that are up is wildfire funding, TLT funding, and then the transportation package funding, right? So those are the three kind of big funding things left where I think Democrats are looking for additional revenue to come in. Not let's reorganize the general fund and pay for these things. They're saying we want new funding. Which is called taxes.
So let's start with TLT. I'm staring at this letter, and I've never seen a letter with so many logos on it.
It's a lot of logos.
It's all the cities, all the counties, right? And it's distributed by LOC and AOC. LOC, League of Oregon Cities. AOC, Association of Oregon Counties, not Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. Support House Bill 3962, which is local lodging tax flexibility. So in 2003, there's a preemption on local lodging taxes. So whatever local lodging taxes existed prior to this 2003, and however they break down, and it's different in every part of the state, how exactly the dollars go out. But we did a statewide lodging tax and we did a local lodging tax preemption. So we lock in 2003. Nothing has changed on those local lodging taxes since 2003, basically, is kind of my understanding from this. It required 70% of new or increased taxes to go toward tourism promotion and tourism-related facilities, only 30% for local discretionary spending. So this House Bill 3962 was just passed out of revenue on a Democrat-Republican party line vote. And I'm not necessarily saying that that's how it should go, but that was the vote out of House revenue. I believe both the R's voted no, although Greg Smith might be on that committee too, actually. So we better check. Can you look up 3962?
Looking up.
It adds flexibility, changes the distribution of new or increased taxes after 2003 so that 60% would be discretionary local government, basically backfill general funds, and 40% would be restricted to tourism promotion and tourism-related facilities. And of course, the counties and the cities are supporting this, gives them access to significant new revenue. A lot of them, I would like to think they're going to use it on stuff like roads and fire and police. There's probably some stupid cities out there that are going to use it for parks and other things before funding their police fully, right. But you can't control that. Local voters are going to have to hold people accountable for that front. So what was the vote? Were you able to pull that up? I did.
So it was in revenue. So it was party line in that committee 4-3.
Okay.
So yeah, it was the no's, the Republican no's are Bobby Levy, Werner Rushke, and Greg Smith.
Okay.
And then Walters, Nathanson, Marsh, and Hudson all voted aye.
Okay.
So it goes to the floor, which is where it's heading next, and it will be now the bill is sponsored by Representative Javity, who's a Republican, and Senator Weber, who's a Republican on the Senate. So you have two Republicans as chief sponsors on the bill.
So the real question is, are there even any Democrats that oppose this idea, first of all?
That's the idea.
And there's been a long time and ongoing broken record discussion, including this morning in Ways and Means. Evans has a bill to study local property tax structure and statewide ballot measures about local taxes. That's talking about Measure 5 and 50, which cap local taxes and property taxes, right? So they do have a pretty limited ability to raise revenue. Property taxes only go up 3% a year max, right? So they don't have a lot of available revenue mechanisms, which is why you see a lot of cities looking at gas taxes, looking at fees on utilities. A lot of cities doing fees on utilities. Albany's looking at a gas tax. I have to buy gas in Albany, so I will be working to oppose that if the council somehow sends it out. But regardless, this is a great option, I think, for cities, or at least they're looking at it. Cities and counties are looking at it. It's a good option for revenue. And there is a lot of discussion about if the Oregon Tourism Commission, Travel Oregon, or the Oregon Tourism, the commission that runs it, and then Travel Oregon, do they have too much money because they're paying their CEO who just resigned $500,000 a year? And maybe we're like one of the highest in the country in terms of advertising dollars, which is why we can hire a nationally recognized marketing firm. Sorry, not Iverson Media, unfortunately, but Wyden Kennedy out of Portland. Also,
I used to work for Wyden Kennedy.
Did you really?
Yeah.
That's Brian. You have such just a deep resume. We need to get your resume out here at some point.
We but through that. I mean,
they're pretty big, right? Yeah. And they're Nike and major companies hire them to do their marketing. I'm sure that they have done marketing budgets of multi-million dollars, right? And Travel Oregon, the government, can basically hire them to do any kinds of ads. And you see the dumbest ads out there. Some of them are pretty normal. Some of them are super dumb. They get about as dumb as those dumb Cover Oregon ads from, the early 2010s.
Yeah, there were some really bad ones. I think so. In Senator Anderson's campaign, we did some town halls up and down the coast, and all that every city talked about was the TLT funding mechanism, right? Just the flexibility. They wanted some more flexibility is really what it came down to, and they all wanted them for kind of various different reasons. Some for more streets, some for, police, all those sort of things. Senator Anderson reminds me that he built the whole police station with TLT funding. Nice. Because they saved it and then they built the police station with it, right? So
fiscal responsibility.
Yeah, and the coast in general kind of says we don't really need that much tourism, like promotion. Like the coast is there, it doesn't change, right? It's kind of a draw, no matter what. It's kind of a draw, and I think that they really look at the other things when they want tourism, because they have such huge problems because of the tourism, traffic and infrastructure and, all of the things and they don't have a large local audience. So you really don't have a ton of ability. A lot of their school bonds fail, things like that, because they're usually retirees living on the coast. Right. So they don't want to vote for school bonds for kids. And then you kind of have this spiraling kind of effect where you start losing younger people because your schools are decaying and all the things, right? So, and then you got these tourists that are kind of coming in. And so the coast is a unique scenario to it. And so I could see where the coastal folks would be definitely for changing this formula, because that is a huge revenue opportunity for them to be able to do things they want to do to fix their communities. And then you go into the valley and you look at, like Albany, I think is what Javity was talking to me about, where they don't really care about tourism. What they want from this is all the people that I-5 goes right through the middle of Albany. So the people that stop there, right, that utilize whatever services they don't have the ability to collect any of that revenue off of those folks.
And I am not trying to diss Visit Albany or any of the groups out there.
They actually have a Visit Albany.
They do. You should look at their website and see what they promote. It's not really a tourism-driven economy. No. And it's not like the coast. I mean, and here's the thing. I don't care how much money you spend on advertising the coast. If it's cold, no one's going to go there. Yeah. You're not going to get... You're not going to increase...
90 in the valley, everybody's there.
You're not... Right. Yeah. You're not going to increase tourism in the winter at the coast. You're just going to get what you get in the summer. You're going to get...
Canadians in the fall.
Right. Exactly. and that's what it is. And so you work with what you've got. And so I totally understand the coast. This is a point in here about 1/3 of jail bookings, arrests, tickets are non-residents in Clatsop County. Like, that's wild.
Yeah,
I don't
crazy?
know. I don't know what everybody's
doing.
Those
Portland people getting all drunk.
Arrested. Yeah, I guess
fighting with people in the local bars.
So they should just bill Portland for those people.
And then, and you're right on. So I'm going to argue the pro for this for a second, and because you're right on the Travel Oregon is an effing train wreck. Travel Salem, Vicky and I drove by it yesterday. We got out of the YMCA working out. We drive around the corner, and it's this big, huge building that sits over here. Physical space. Who goes to Salem? Like, Travel Salem, really? Like, nobody wants to tour Salem. If they do, they come check out the Capitol and they move on, right? You drive through Salem. And so all of these regional hubs that get all of this money that it trickles down to, like in Central Oregon, I used to argue against the COVA all the time. Central Oregon Visitors Association, which was a benefactor of all this revenue. All they ever advertised was Mount Bachelor and Sun River. And then, as Ben grew up, they would advertise Ben, but they never went after anything that we cared about in Crook County or Jefferson County. They would never promote rodeos because they don't like animals.
It's animal cruelty.
Yeah. So they hate rodeos. So they don't ever promote any rodeos. They never promoted boating. And we always had like Prineville Reservoir. You got, Lake Billy Chinook. They never promoted boating as a destination for boaters because they don't like boaters because it goes against their clean energy agenda. And then, you know what else that they don't ever promote? Hunting. They don't promote hunting because they don't want animals to die. So none of those things. And I used to just go against COVA all the time and say, why are we giving you our money? We should have our own TLT revenue. We should have our own. We should be part of Eastern Oregon. Of course, Eastern Oregon doesn't do that either. And all they want to promote is the Owyhee Canyon lands to go hiking, right? They don't want to promote the other things too, or birding down in Burns, right? No, how about bird hunting? Because the bird hunting in Owyhee Canyons is awesome. If you ever want to go chukar hunting, it's some of the best in the country. But they don't promote that. So that is, and if you go on Travel Oregon's website right now, you'll see travel for LGBTQ, fun places to go in Oregon, wine country. I think I wonder if Representative Elmer would vote. She'll probably vote for it or vote against it because she probably wants to have people keep going to Pinot Noir country, but which is fine, right? I don't have a problem with all that. But again, I think what the pro side of this bill, from what I understand it, is if that community, if McMinnville wants to spend all of their money on tourism, they can. So it gives more flexibility. Now, the negative side of this is I would say, to argue with our friends at Oregon Lodging, Restaurant and Lodging, is the downside is that if you stop advertising, they will stop coming. If Oregon isn't seen as this beautiful place, this beautiful destination, LGBTQ plus, safe, all those things. Like I get groups of people they're trying to target to say this is a great place to come visit, and here's why. Right? Here's the different areas. The coast, even on some level, if not advertised long enough, it doesn't become top of mind. People just don't think about it, right? Like so there is value in a continuous effort of advertising for tourism, because the tourism market is vast. There's every state has the same thing, trying to argue for the same pot of money of people looking to travel and saying, if you're going to go somewhere, come here. We're competing against Washington for people who live in Missouri that want to come out west. Well, we want them to come to Oregon. We don't want them to go to Washington. So if we cut that spigot off, that erodes over time. And I think that's the reason, I think the chief reason why you wouldn't want this bill. As much as I support those local cities, I don't like LOC on any level. I think they're a horrible organization, but I like the individual cities that are there, and I think they all want the same thing. We got to figure out a way to get them some additional revenue without cutting the knees off of the current revenue structure that we have.
My idea to get
So,
local government revenue is to eliminate the cities, give half of their tax money to the counties to do all the same things, because they duplicate so many things, and then boom, and just keep your urban growth boundaries. But that's probably not going to happen. So, and I apologize for eliminating 200 cities or whatever we have in Oregon, or that's school boards, but whatever.
Yeah, we do have too many cities. I agree.
It's a lot, and I think a lot of their governments are kind of dumb, unfortunately, and that they would be better run by the counties. And there's a lot of duplication there. And even if they just found a way to, what would save us on building, Brian, is if all the cities were like, we're referring you to the county for building department, everything,
Yeah,
right? And so
that would make it a lot easier. I mean, streamlining some of that stuff makes a lot of sense, and I think so.
We're dodging the government.
But we'll see what happens. TLT next week. We'll do another obviously thing on it. We'll see how it evolves. Transportation, because I feel like we've talked about that one ad nauseum.
The only thing that's interesting is Brian Boquist set up a PAC to refer it to the ballot, and he's already almost raised $200,000 from a lot of the auto folks, which is great. I think it's good to have this on the outside, keep Democrats honest in the building by threatening to refer their stuff outside the building. I think that's great strategy. Whoever came up with that is very, very smart. Bruce Starr is negotiating for kind of the Senate Republicans. He used to serve with Brian Boquist. I did laugh very hard because John Swanson said here that he's a director on the PAC and that everything that he is doing is totally not connected to his legislative work, which I found hilarious. Great job, John. Way to stick to the talking points.
I am not a fan of Brian Boquist, so there's that. But the idea is great. Boquist needs to go away. It's just I just don't think I think people are just over Brian Boquist in this state, and I thought he was moving to Idaho anyway. So, but whatever. Great idea though by John and Bruce Starr. So I appreciate the idea. I think the idea of hovering is important, right? To have that kind of hover that we could refer it to voters to basically repeal it. And I think, Representative Lively said it best, right? If it goes to the voters, it will fail.
Starr talked about that, how he did a package in 2000 that went to the voters and it got killed 80-10.
Yeah.
I mean, it'll get annihilated. So
I think so. I think that there's something to it, but we'll see what happens there. Good idea. There's a couple, one person on that's not right for it, but that's all right. I mean, John's a smart guy. He knows what he's doing. Bruce knows what they're doing. So wildfire funding, let's kind of end it on wildfire funding today. That's the last funding package, and we can kind of come back to these next week to see where they ended up. The last thing that we've heard about wildfire funding is they're going after the zinners. So if you use Zinn, it's going to get more expensive. Where it ends up, who knows? The one thing I can tell you is that every 25-cent tax on one can of Zinn generates about $5.5 million. So the Democrats see that, and it's dinner time, baby. Like, they love a new tax.
I'm sorry,
Did
you say Zinner time?
Yeah, Zinner time. It's Zinner time. That's probably the Democrats will probably have a barbecue, and they'll call it Zinner time after they get the tax and stuff. But I think that tax, finding a new tax for them is literally like finding that Christmas present that you didn't think you had any left after everybody opened their gifts, and they'll go, "Oh, Reagan, you still had one more gift under the tree," and you're like, "No way, this is awesome! I got one more gift." And it's Zinn. Everybody thought, I think most people thought Zinn was already taxed like Copenhagen or something else. Not taxed yet like Copenhagen. So they want to use portions of that or use it for Wildfire and then have some other things that go into Wildfire. It's not nearly enough money to go into Wildfire, but I just think it doesn't make a lot of sense. I don't know how Zinn tax has to do with Wildfire funding. I think that there's some, the insurance companies pay into the state of Oregon for the right to operate in Oregon. Like, that seems like a better spot because they're actually insuring against wildfire. But no, they don't want that. They want new taxes, and they're going to get it with Zinn. It's really just a matter of how much.
Yeah. And I think, the hard part with it is that we need so much money for Wildfire. It was like over $300 million last cycle. And so that's, a lot of Zinn tax to get you to that dollar amount. So hopefully we'll continue to do
$9 a can.
I think that's going to reduce Zinn purchases. There's going to be a lot of people going to Washington for their Zinn. But back to the one thing, too, I wanted to point out, totally underrated in marketing, is we should have more ads for Oregon that says "Visit Oregon, Washington sucks." Because I think that would be funny. Because besides the fact that you go over the bridge into Vancouver and it's 10 times nicer than Portland, there really isn't anything about Washington that I found to be particularly special. It's kind of like just a worse version of Oregon. Washington sucks. Visit Oregon. There you go. I just saved you tens of millions of dollars on retainers with Wyden Kennedy. And also I'm going to trademark that so that they have to pay me. But yes, Zinn taxes, I think that's going to be super interesting. You know what I haven't heard? Alcohol taxes. I thought that we were gearing up for a big alcohol tax session, and I have not seen that bill anywhere. I saw early in the session when Co-Chair Sanchez dropped her number. I haven't heard of it. So
that's a good point.
I think maybe that is
gone,
living eternally in Olus, as we would say in the 2023 session. No kill list, nothing's dead. It just lives eternally in Olus.
They've found a different spot to go to. The only thing I fear with the Zinn tax, they come in and do it, maybe there's enough money for them to go back and get the flavor ban back on. I don't think that'll come out this cycle, which is probably good.
They can get my vote on that by exempting vanilla cigars. That's the only kind of flavor that I really care about. Or if they exempt cigar flavors, because I like cigars occasionally. I smoke maybe 2 a year.
Yeah.
So that's my only part. But
our argument on all that is like, until you do away with marijuana and gummies.
Oh, that's a great point.
Come on.
That's
you have
such a good point.
Gummies with marijuana, and yet you think the problem is flavored inhalants. Like,
dude, children don't like gummies,
seriously.
Do they? My wife literally packed in my lunch today these Lego gummies that she found that the kids do. They're literally designed like Legos, so they're still gummies that you can eat, but you can also stack them like Legos, and my kids love them. And I ate them, and I didn't play with them, definitely.
Maybe we should do some Lego gummies for adults.
No. But anyway, I want to clarify, I don't use marijuana gummies. They're regular gummies. But obviously kids are going to be interested in gummies, and so your point is like, okay, so we're going to say that a kid wants to smoke vanilla cigarettes, but they don't want marijuana gummies or brownies.
It just seems
brilliant.
It just seems silly to me. It's off base. I understand the desire to not have kids do this sort of stuff.
And I don't want them to either.
I think that coupled with enforcement is the two things that we need to focus on. And I think enforcement is also important to make sure that our different C-stores, convenience stores and stuff are only selling to adults. And you know what? We live in America. Dang it, Reagan. At the end of the day, you know, I'm not a Mexican citizen. I'm not a citizen of Palestine, if it was a country. I'm not from El Salvador. I was lucky enough to be born in this incredible country. And if I'm 22 and I want to have flavored tobacco from China even and kill myself, gosh dang it, I'm going to do it. So you have the right to do that. And I think that's what we just have to remember, that my cup of tea isn't somebody else's cup of tea. So that's the reality of it. More to come next week. Yep. I say we end it here. Long enough. I pontificated. I got to drive to Northwest Oregon and then back to Prineville in a day. So I got things to do.
All right, Brian. Thanks again. We'll rant on Israel next week.
Yeah. Go Israel.
Walking down these marble halls today. Got a bill, I want to make it sway. People talking left and right. But we're gonna do this thing tonight. Oh, yeah. Time to make a move. Can't afford to lose. Got the votes to prove what we're gonna do. We're dancing back and forth on the Senate floor. Yeah. Moving bills through an open door. Round and round until we score. This is what we came here for. Dancing on the Senate floor. Representatives and senators meet, trading words to find the perfect beat. Committee hearings all day long, till we finally sing the same song. Oh, yeah. Amendments flying high, watch them pass on by. Gotta give and try, make this bill fly. We're dancing back and forth on the Senate floor. Yeah, yeah. Moving bills through an open door. Round and round until we score. This is what we came here for. Dancing on the Senate floor. When the votes align, and the count is right. Feel that Oregon pride, as we pass it tonight.